carnival rolled into town on a Wednesday, slipping in under the cover of dawn when most of the town was still asleep. It set up in the old Miller field on the outskirts, a sprawling expanse where wildflowers tangled with tall grasses and the remnants of a broken fence leaned like weary soldiers. The townspeople noticed the sudden appearance by midday, a Ferris wheel towering against the sky, colorful tents sprouting like mushrooms after the rain, and strings of lights waiting to flicker to life. But there was something off about this carnival. The colors of the tents were muted, as if faded by too many seasons under a relentless sun. The banners hung limp, edges frayed and tattered. The Ferris wheel groaned when it turned, a sound that carried on the wind like a distant lament. The air was thick with the scent of nostalgia, a mix of caramel apples, roasted peanuts, and the metallic tang of rust. Beneath it all lurked an undercurrent of something else, something that prickled the skin and quickened the heartbeat, a sense of old magic tinged with foreboding. Danny noticed it immediately. At 17, he was restless, caught between the obligations of school and the monotony of small-town life. The arrival of the carnival felt like a sign, a doorway to something beyond the familiar streets and faces he'd known all his life. He stood at the edge of the field that first afternoon, watching as workers moved like shadows among the tents, setting up games and testing rides. A thrill coursed through him, a whisper of adventure that beckoned irresistibly. That evening, as the sun dipped low and the sky blazed with hues of orange and pink, Danny made his way back to the carnival. The entrance was marked by an ornate archway, its once gilded details now dulled. The gate creaked open at his touch. He hesitated for just a moment, a flicker of doubt gnawing at him, but then he stepped through. Inside, the carnival came alive. Lights flickered to life, casting a warm glow that softened the worn edges of everything they touched. Calliope music drifted through the air, melancholic and haunting, yet oddly comforting. Laughter and murmurs of other visitors mingled with the distant roar of rides. Danny wandered along the midway, past game booths adorned with faded prizes and food stalls offering cotton candy that spun like wisps of cloud. As he moved deeper into the carnival, he felt a strange sensation, a shiver that traced his spine, as if unseen eyes were upon him. He brushed it off, attributing it to the excitement of the night, and that's when he saw her. She stood behind a game booth titled "Test Your Fate," the sign's letters peeling but still legible. Her hair cascaded over her shoulders in dark waves, as black as a moonless night. Her skin was fair, almost luminous under the glow of the carnival lights. But it was her eyes that captivated him, deep emerald pools that seemed to hold entire galaxies, filled with secrets and stars. She wore a simple dress, vintage in style, that fluttered around her as if caught in a perpetual breeze. Their gazes met, and the cacophony of the carnival faded into the background. For a moment, it was just the two of them, suspended in time. She offered a small, enigmatic smile and beckoned him closer with a graceful motion of her hand. "Care to test your fate?" she asked, her voice soft yet clear, carrying a melodic lilt that sent warmth blooming in his chest. Danny approached the booth, his heart pounding. "What are the stakes?" he replied, attempting a casual tone. Her smile widened just a fraction. "Only what you're willing to wager." He glanced at the array of items behind her. Old-fashioned trinkets, stuffed animals that had seen better days, a pocket watch glinting under the lights. "And what do I stand to win?" "Perhaps something priceless," she said, her eyes never leaving his. He chuckled nervously. "Sounds mysterious. Life's more interesting that way, don't you think?" They fell into easy conversation. Her name was Lila. She spoke of places he'd only read about, ancient cities, mist-covered mountains, markets filled with spices and colors beyond imagination. She described the taste of exotic fruits, the sound of foreign languages, the feeling of standing on the edge of the world. Danny hung on every word, his own world expanding with each story. "Do you travel a lot with the carnival?" he asked. She hesitated, a shadow passing over her face. "I've been with it for as long as I can remember." "That must be amazing," he said, "to see so much." "It has its moments," she replied softly, her gaze drifting. "But sometimes I wonder what it would be like to stay in one place." "Maybe you could," he suggested, a hopeful note in his voice. Lila looked at him, a hint of sadness in her eyes. "Some things aren't that simple." As the night wore on, the crowd thinned. The other workers began closing up their booths, the lively atmosphere winding down. Danny realized with a start how late it had become. "I should probably get going," he admitted reluctantly. Lila nodded. "Will you come back tomorrow?" "Try and stop me," he grinned. She reached out and gently touched his hand. "Be careful, Danny." He frowned slightly. "Of what?" She opened her mouth as if to speak, then shook her head. "Just promise me you'll be careful." "I promise," he said, puzzled but earnest. That night, as Danny lay in bed, he couldn't stop thinking about Lila. There was something enchanting about her, something that made him feel alive in a way he hadn't before. Sleep came slowly, filled with dreams of distant lands and a girl with emerald eyes. Over the next few days, Danny returned to the carnival every evening. Each time he sought out Lila, and together they explored the hidden corners of the carnival. She showed him a hall of mirrors where reflections twisted in impossible ways, a garden maze that seemed to rearrange itself, and an old carousel where the painted horses felt almost alive beneath their touch. "How is it I've never noticed these before?" Danny wondered aloud. "Sometimes you have to know where to look," Lila replied cryptically. Their connection deepened. They laughed, shared secrets, and in the quiet moments, Danny felt as if they were the only two people in the world. Yet beneath Lila's smiles, he sensed a lingering sorrow. One evening, as they sat atop the Ferris wheel, the town sprawled below them like a patchwork quilt. Danny turned to her. "There's so much I don't know about you," he said. She gazed out at the horizon. "Maybe some mysteries are better left unsolved. Or maybe they're worth exploring," he countered gently. "I feel like I've known you forever, and yet it's only been days." Lila met his eyes. "Time is a funny thing here." "What do you mean?" She sighed softly. "Danny, have you ever wanted something so badly that you'd do anything to have it?" He thought for a moment. "I suppose. I want to see the world, to escape this place." She smiled sadly. "And what if the cost was more than you could imagine?" "Is that how you feel?" he asked, concern creeping into his voice. "Sometimes," she whispered, "but meeting you has made it better." "Then stay," he urged. "When the carnival leaves, stay here with me." Lila looked away, her expression torn. "I wish I could." "Why can't you?" Danny pressed. She didn't answer. On the carnival's final night, a sense of urgency gnawed at Danny. The air was thick, heavy with unspoken words. He found Lila waiting by the entrance, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. "Walk with me," she said. They moved through the carnival, which seemed different tonight. The colors were more vibrant, the sounds sharper. Yet there was an undercurrent of unease. The other workers watched them pass with unreadable expressions. They reached a tent Danny had never seen before, a grand structure with rich, velvety fabric and golden accents that shimmered under the lights. Strange symbols adorned the entrance, swirling patterns that made his eyes ache if he looked too long. "Lila, what's going on?" he asked, a knot forming in his stomach. She faced him, tears brimming in her eyes. "I need to show you something, but you have to trust me." "You're scaring me," he admitted. "I never wanted this for you," she said, her voice trembling. "But it's the only way." "The only way for what?" She took his hands, her grip cold. "Do you love me?" Danny's heart pounded. "Yes," he breathed. "I think I do." "Then please come with me, and whatever happens, don't let go." He hesitated, fear and love warring within him, but he couldn't abandon her. "Okay," he agreed. They stepped inside the tent. Darkness enveloped them, the air thick with the scent of incense and something metallic. Soft light began to glow around them, revealing a vast space that seemed impossibly large. Figures emerged from the shadows, carnival workers, their faces solemn. At the center stood an ornate mirror, its surface rippling like liquid silver. Symbols circled its frame, pulsing with ethereal light. "What is this?" Danny whispered. Lila squeezed his hand. "A gateway. To where? To where we belong." He turned to her, confusion etched on his face. "I don't understand." She closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I'm not like you, Danny. None of us are. What do you mean?" "We're bound to this carnival, spirits caught between worlds. We draw energy from those who visit, from their wonder and awe. But it's not enough. To sustain ourselves, we need more." Realization dawned on him, horror creeping in. "More? Like what?" "Like the essence of someone who loves us," she admitted, her voice barely audible. Danny pulled his hand away. "You used me?" "No," she cried. "I fought against it. I tried to warn you, but the others, they insisted." He backed away, his mind reeling. I trusted you. I know, she sobbed, and that's why I'm giving you a chance. The workers began to close in, their eyes glowing faintly. The mirror's surface shimmered, tendrils of light reaching out like grasping hands. Run, Danny, Lila urged, before it's too late. He looked at her, torn between anger and despair. Come with me. I can't, she said. I'm bound here, but you can escape. Not without you. She smiled sadly. You're braver than I thought. The tendrils drew closer, the air humming with energy. Go, she shouted. Summoning his strength, Danny turned and bolted toward the tent's entrance. The workers moved to block him, but Lila stepped in their path, her form glowing with sudden brilliance. Leave him be, she commanded. They recoiled, hissing in anger. Danny burst out of the tent into the cool night air. The carnival around him was changing, the rides twisting into grotesque shapes, lights flickering erratically. Shadows stretched and warped, reaching for him. He sprinted toward the gate, his lungs burning. The music warped, discordant notes jarring his senses. As he neared the exit, the archway began to close, iron bars descending like teeth. With a final burst of speed, he dove through the narrowing gap, landing hard on the ground outside. He rolled over, gasping, and looked back. The carnival was gone. He lay there, the grass damp beneath him, the stars shining innocently above. No tents, no lights, no sounds, just an empty field swaying gently in the night breeze. For a long time, Danny couldn't move. His mind struggled to process what had happened. Had it all been a dream, a hallucination? But then he felt something in his hand, a small, cool object. Opening his palm, he found a silver pendant shaped like a crescent moon. It wasn't his. Lila, he whispered. In the weeks that followed, Danny tried to return to normal life, but nothing felt the same. He searched for any sign of the carnival, scouring newspapers and traveling to nearby towns, but it was as if it had never existed. One evening, he sat on the porch, the pendant dangling from his fingers. The sun was setting, casting the world in hues of gold and crimson. "Are you out there?" he murmured. "Did you make it?" A soft breeze brushed past, carrying the faintest hint of that familiar scent, caramel apples and something ethereal. He closed his eyes, and for a moment he thought he heard her voice. "Thank you," it whispered. Years later, tales spread of a mysterious carnival that appeared without warning and vanished just as quickly. Whispers spoke of its enchantment, of people who went missing, of impossible wonders and eerie occurrences. Danny became a storyteller, sharing his own experiences with those willing to listen. Most dismissed his tales as fiction, but a few saw the truth in his eyes. One night, after sharing his story at a small cafe, a young woman approached him. She had dark hair and eyes the color of emeralds. "Interesting story," she said, a slight smile on her lips. Danny's heart skipped a beat. "Do I know you?" She tilted her head. "Perhaps in another life." He studied her face, a mix of hope and caution swirling within him. "What's your name?" She extended her hand. "Alara." He took it, feeling a familiar warmth. "I'm Danny." "Nice to meet you, Danny," she said softly. As they stood there, the sounds of the cafe fading into the background, he couldn't shake the feeling that destiny was offering him a second chance. "Would you like to take a walk?" he asked. She smiled. "I'd love to." They stepped out into the night, the stars shining brightly above, a tapestry of endless possibilities.
In the chilling echo of Lila's last dance, we are reminded of the thin veil separating the tangible from the spectral. Just as Lila danced on that line, so too do we tread in Ravenwood, where the unknown lurks in every shadow. It's a dance I know all too well, a step in rhythm with my feline companion Shadow, under the watchful eyes of the unseen. Now I ask you, dear listeners, do we dance along this boundary by choice, or are we led by unseen partners, guided by the rhythm of mystery and intrigue? Mull over this as the moonlight wanes and the dawn breaks, and share your thoughts, fears, and revelations with us. Thank you for joining me, Bethany Harper, on this spectral waltz. As the night folds into the arms of the day, remember, our dance here in Twisted Tales continues every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Until our paths cross again under the shrouded moon, keep your senses sharp and your spirit curious. For in Ravenwood, the dance never truly ends.